Hello, Piano Excellence for Life participants. Welcome to our third block of our program. And this block is dedicated to practice. I think this is one of the most important topics in piano learning process. So we will be talking about all of those things and hopefully give you some ideas to how make your practice more successful, more efficient, more enjoyable, and most importantly, to give you inspiration to practice. I will start with the quote that my favorite pianist Vladimir Horowitz used to tell a lot, and you can find this in the readings and in some of his interviews. He used to say, "When I don't practice one day, I notice it. When I don't practice 2 days, my wife notices it. When I don't practice 3 days, the audience notices." So bottom line, we all know that we need to practice every single day. And I know there's a lot of conversation going among pianists, even professional pianists and amateur pianists, about what is more important, to sit at the piano a certain amount of hours or to be very efficient. Yes, that actually, I think both things are very important. And I've met with some parents of my students who said, well, I think all she needs to do is just could be done in 15 minutes, right? Or in 10 minutes. She just needs to be very efficient. And I always, take a deep breath and try to explain. But yes, efficiency is very important. But also you want to make sure you dedicate at least an hour a day, right? In order to be successful at the piano, in order to acquire results, right? And because you need to influence so many things, not just your brain, right? Just knowing exactly what to do. But this is a physical process, right? So we need to be able to give our hands, our bodies enough time, right, in order to make things work. So we will talk about both. I already kind of dropped the number, right? At least 1 hour a day we need to dedicate to piano practice. And then, above all, it's your choice. So I actually wanted to start by giving you some information, right? Something to think about of how famous pianists, the famous composers, how much time did they practice? Let's start with Chopin. Chopin used to say that 3 hours a day is perfectly enough. And in fact, he would not recommend his students to practice more than 3 hours a day because he thought that, your brain is already a little bit tired, your mind is tired, you don't have the same level of focus. So 3 hours is plenty of time to make enough progress. Rachmaninoff practiced more. So for Rachmaninoff, it was all about having a really clear discipline, really, really strong routine. So it was his rule to get up early, and then from 7 a.m. until 12 p.m., he would just basically lock himself in his office with the piano, and he would practice and compose every single day. And all of his family members who lived in a household, they knew that this time cannot be interrupted, right? So it was a very big sin in a house if somebody would dare to interrupt maestro. So he would practice for 5 hours a day, maybe with some breaks, either composing or actually practicing his pieces on the piano. So another pianist that I respect so much, Sviatoslav Richter, practiced a lot. It's actually quite unclear how much exactly he practiced, how many hours. But I know that he could do up to 10 and sometimes 12 hours a day. These are real numbers, and I actually personally know some musicians who work like this when they need to 10 to 12 hours. They just sit all day at the piano and work. It's incredible. So what we know about Richter is how diligent he was when it comes to sort of recovering your piece after a performance. So for example, when he would be on a tour and he would have concerts, at the end of the concert, excuse me, he would go back to this hotel, and while other musicians would go for some after parties and dinners and activities, he would lock himself in a room. He would always have a piano, and he would make sure he repeats entire concert program in slow tempo 3 times in a row. And imagine if the entire program was like an hour and a half long, right, on average. If you play it slowly, you basically play in 2 times slower, right? So you need like about 3 hours in order to go through entire program. And he would do it 3 times in a row, because his rule of thumb was, if you played something once fast, which always all the time ruins the piece a little bit, right? When we play fast, we can't hear everything. So the rule of thumb, you have to play 3 times slowly in order to recover from that fast playing. So I know this story from one of the books I read about Richter. Um, there was a couple of musicians on a tour. They lived in a hotel, and then one of them, after the concert was over, one of them would just hear some music. It was like 3 a.m. and he didn't know where music is coming from. It's nighttime. And then he came to the Richter's room and just listened, and he was practicing because he was doing his 3 rounds of slow playing after the concert. So in the morning he asked him, what were you doing? You just finished your recital program. And then Richter explained that this was what he normally does, right? He would just go through all of the programs slowly 3 times. So this is, I bet it took him so many hours, right? But this is something that we're going to talk about in efficiency, right? How to make sure it's effective, and what are some of the rules that we should follow. Well, true or not, but I know something about Martha Argerich, that apparently she practices every day from 30 minutes to 2 hours and a half. And the rest of the time she enjoys, spending time with friends, shopping, and just have a glamorous life. Not sure of how much of that is true, but, again, the time is something that can be negotiated, right? So, and we will talk about efficiency a lot, like what can you do in 30 minutes, in 40 minutes? What are some of the rules we should follow? Whether or not you just have to play through in concert tempo or sit down and do things slowly. How can you still be efficient if you don't have much time to practice? I think one of the most important things that we overlook sometimes when it comes to practice, we want to make sure we have enough inspiration, right, to practice, to sit down. So we constantly need to cultivate the love for music, right, love for piano literature. And I think one of the best things to do is to actually pick up a book that was written about piano. There's so many incredible books. I will share with you some of them, some that I love personally, and I think they're very inspiring. And I feel like if I am personally reading something like this, it always gives me the desire to come to the instrument and play. And this desire is very important, but it cannot be just dry and out of knowing that I should do it. Sometimes that comes to place too, but I think in general, just cultivating that inspiration for yourself, right? Just setting that environment, that would be really, really important step to start from. So some of my favorite books. This is an all-time favorite, Joseph Hoffman's Piano Playing with Piano Questions Answered. So I highly recommend this book. This is sort of like an interview, and I believe there was some kind of program on the radio beginning of 20th century. And so Hoffman was invited to this radio show, and people would just call and ask all these random questions. Some questions are absolutely hilarious. For example, this question, Rubinstein or Liszt, which one is greater? So there's great questions. Books that age the student working alone, Wonder Children as pianist, the value of going to concerts. So there's just many, all kinds of questions answered, and this book is very fascinating to read. So highly recommend that. Second one, Seymour Bernstein. He's, I think in his 90s, still teaching, still educating all of us, and this is one of the most delightful books. I think he actually did teach a lot of adult students, and so this book, I believe, would be especially fantastic for adult learners. So basically lifelong learners and music lovers. So highly recommend that book. This is a great book with a lot of interviews of famous pianists that was done by Adele Marcus when she was a teacher at the Juilliard a few decades ago, but also very inspiring book, very enjoyable, easy to read. Another set of interviews. I love interviews. So it's called Quintet. These are the interviews of Yo-Yo Ma, Jeffrey Tate, Joseph Gingold, Richard Good, who's a pianist, that's the one for us, and Birgit Nilsson. So not all of them are pianists. There's only one pianist here, but this is also very, very fascinating. And last one, this is my favorite books ever. Sorry, the cover was lost, and it's called Evenings with Horowitz. There's a lot of phenomenal and great stories about Horowitz, and it's written by a man, David Duvall, who spent a lot of times with Horowitz, not just with Vladimir, but also with his famous wife, Wanda. And it's just amazing, amazing reading, very inspiring. So I think these books are actually easy to read with lots of great stories, and they should give you a great source of inspiration. Now let's start from figuring out your practice routine. As we said earlier, you probably need 1 hour a day at least in order to make progress. So if you can do 15 minutes plus, say on a weekend, on your free day, it's always great. The more the better, right? But I think 1 hour is the minimum. Now think about what would be the most productive time of the day for you. And I know sometimes we are not free people, we have work and family obligations, and our life seems to be just get busy and busier, no matter who you are and what you do. But try to prioritize maybe first half of the day if you can, and do some practice in the morning. I just actually happened to have a phone call with one of my colleagues, and she was sharing with me that her daughter, when she was young, when she took piano lessons with one of the very successful teachers in the area, her lesson was scheduled 3 times a week with this teacher, and the lesson time, no kidding, from 5:30 a.m. until 6:30 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Imagine that. Do you have so much love and inspiration for music to get up so early, right, and just play? But there's something about this morning hour that is so great, and if you can get up extra, I don't know, even 30 minutes early and do some work, that would be really great. I want to inspire you by reading just a little bit from this book by Joseph Hoffman. So the chapter is called The Value of the Morning Hour. So the value of the morning hour above any other time is not generally appreciated. The mental freshness gained from the sleep is tremendous help. I go so far as to say play away for an hour or a half hour even before breakfast. But before you touch the piano, let me suggest one very prosaic little hint. Wash the keyboard as clean as you did wash your hands. Eating always tastes best from the clean table. Just so with the piano, you cannot do clean work on an unclean keyboard. I think this was really great. But I do think that this morning hour of practice is actually very, very valuable. So if you can squeeze 30 minutes, why not do that? So let's briefly today talk about a certain framework that would be ideal. Of course, this framework is also very flexible, but I would say let's just start from the ideal perspective. What would be nice to have on your plate every time you practice? So first is a warm-up, right? So super important. We're going to talk about this a little bit more during our second lecture. Just kind of break the routine into segments. But first is a warm-up, where you want to do your scales, your arpeggios, hand on some technical nature exercises. Second is your repertoire, right? After you feel like you're more warmed up, you want to go into the pieces that you're working on. And let's just say this probably should be your long-term pieces, not your short-term pieces, because short-term pieces, which is sight reading or just something that's easy to do, they also have a purpose of relaxing, right? But after you warm up, I would suggest that you go to something that is the hardest thing, right, on your plate. So your long-term repertoire. The third, as I say, is the pieces that we learn on the fly. It could be something to sight read or just a short-term piece that you're working on. And then number 4, if you still have time, and sometimes you will not, but that's okay. If you still have time, try to do some dream piece, right? Something that is harder for you, but you're just okay to take things slowly and just start working, one measure at a time or one line at a time, hands separately, but just something that you feel like this is definitely going to bring me on the next level. So I think these 4 components are quite important. Perhaps there's some that could be omitted, but I would say with the first 2, I would always try to have this in your practice. So which is warm up and your long-term piece, something that your repertoire, right, you're working on. All right, in our next lecture, we're going to talk more about how to be efficient, right? How to plan. I think one of the key ingredients is to actually have a plan, knowing exactly what to accomplish, setting yourself a goal. So we will try to break down the practice routine and see what could your possible week look like in terms of efficient and successful practicing. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope you get more inspiration from the reading, and also maybe trying to think about what could be a best time during the day for me to practice, especially when we don't have that much time. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.